Hey, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in. My call sign is Blitz, and today we are talking about 5 things that I wish I would have known when I was that newbie survivalist, when I was just the baby survivalist, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I couldn't even start a fire. But I thought that buying gimmicks would help me do that better. It didn't. But anyways, 5 things that if I could fire up my time machine and go back in time and tell myself not to do, these are the 5 things. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First up on our list is not packing enough food and water. I don't know, honestly, looking back now, I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I figured I'd live on ramen, beef jerky, and a generous amount of hate. So yeah, now I take into account actually how many calories I burn on an average day, and I pack accordingly. Now, obviously guys, you got to keep in mind that you're not going to be able to suck down the same amount of calories you do at home unless you want to carry more food, which means more weight and then less room for other gear. So for me, after some trial and error, I settled on about 1,300 to 1,500 calories per day, which is about a cut of 500 off my maintenance calories. So what this means is, yes, I'll probably drop a few pounds over the course of, let's say an average bug out vacation, which is 3 days. And that's not the end of the world. No big deal. And then of course, water, also super important, especially here in Florida, especially during this time of year. And I found myself on more than a few occasions not having enough water with me and not being in an area where I could easily acquire water. So water and food, these are 2 pretty big ones and pretty important for survival. But that was definitely me in the beginning, more interested in packing cool stuff and tools, and like the food and the water was kind of an afterthought. Next up is pack for the mission. As a newbie, I carried way too much gear because honestly, I didn't know what I really needed, so more than a few things were just nice to have, and then you know how that works out. Nice to have turns into this extra weight really sucks and I need to figure out a way to eliminate it. And the fix for all of this problem is to literally just pack for the mission at hand. So what I mean by that is, if the mission is bushcraft, then bring bushcraft tools. If the mission is escape and evasion, then the gear must reflect that mission, which means you probably don't need an axe or a folding saw, but hey, maybe some wire cutters and a lockpick set would be a better addition to your gear. Buying gimmicky stuff. Now, I've been guilty of this, and maybe you have been as well. And I'm not saying there's like anything inherently wrong with buying a survival tool with 6 different functions or a flashlight knife combination thing, as long as you go out and you use it in the field and see how well it holds up and see if it actually works. It has been my experience that the more parts and moving stuff that a tool has, the higher the probability level is that it will fail in some way, right? And that's not rocket science, just common sense. More moving parts, more points of failure. And now that I think about it, gimmicky stuff is attractive to noobs like myself because the selling point makes you think this tool is just somehow a substitute for actual training, and this is the only tool you need to survive in any situation. Now, in my case, oddly enough, the issues that I was having with starting a fire were not related to the fire starter. I didn't need to go buy that gimmicky fire starter, that blast match thing that broke after 2 uses. Turns out the problem was on me, and that was easily solved by more training and lighting fires every single time I went out in the woods. It didn't matter what I did, I was going to light a fire every single time. So now my fire starter kit is pretty simple. It's just a fire steel and a big lighter. That's all I need, right? It's inexpensive, it's highly effective, and it's redundant, and it's just basic and to the point. Not a bunch of moving parts, definitely not a gimmick. Next up is just being tactical with everything I did, like tactical as in the clothing I was wearing and the gear that I was wearing, right? This just took a lot of time for me to work through mentally, but I finally realized that I can't really pick the environment that I'm going to be in when a bug out situation happens, right? I need to be able to exist and be perfectly fine in an urban environment or a wilderness environment, because let's face it, if there is a situation so incredibly bad that I'm on foot with my bug out bag and a weapon, I damn sure need to blend in, and running around in an urban environment in full tactical gear that would be a no-go. And then in a forest environment, running around in completely civilian casual attire would also be a no-go. So there's like a nice middle ground there, which I think I've found that I kind of just like every time I try to build on. So my clothing and my gear still retains the same functionality that I get from tactical gear, but without the look. And finally, guys, caching. This is super important, and it's definitely a strategy I should have employed a lot sooner due to the prep work and the time it takes to set up a legitimate system of caches. You know, I kind of used to think of caching as just, you know, people hiding or burying treasure. We've been doing that since the beginning of time. You know, there's various reasons. In days of old, when your city was about to be sacked and everyone put to the sword, you might bury some valuables just in case you survive. You got something to come back for, you know? Or if we look in modern context, my view of caching was like, oh no, the government's gonna come for my guns. I gotta get the 55-gallon drum, coat all my weapons in grease, dump them in the drum, bury it, and then I have something to come back to later when we revolt against the government or whatever. But that was kind of a limited focus. I kind of expanded beyond that as I started really looking at the problems I was trying to solve and defining a strategy going forward. So I'd love to go into more detail, but that is for the video coming up, and I definitely wouldn't want to ruin that video. But suffice it to say, I started by looking at caching in two different areas, short-term and long-term caches. So that's all I'm going to give up on that video. That should be coming out real soon. Make sure you hit that sub button and tap that bell notification so you know when it comes out next. Now granted, there is other stuff to throw on that list, and like one thing that comes to mind right now is bring more socks. If I could go back in time and tell that to myself, I definitely would have saved my feet a lot of pain and undue trauma and misery and PTSD from not bringing more socks. Like one pair of socks, that is just no go. 2 pair of socks, okay, now we're talking. 3 pair of socks and 4 pair of socks, ooh, that's a whole new level. So bring more socks. With that being said, guys, enough about me. Hit me up down there in the comments and, you know, lend some sage wisdom to people who are new on this path of survivalism. If you've been doing this for a while, you've been through experiences, right? And you've learned and you've made mistakes. And that's what making mistakes is all about, guys. It means that you're actually going out and doing some things. So don't be afraid of failure. Be afraid of not ever trying, right? Pushing past that and say, I don't care if I fail. Just doing this thing is enough of a victory, and then once I do it once, I'll probably end up doing it again, and I'll keep getting that training, I keep getting that good experience. So the point of the matter is, guys, don't make those same mistakes. Get out in the field and train. Embrace yourself for what is looking like. Increasingly, as I look, I don't even check the news anymore. I check in like every couple weeks, and I'm like, oh, okay, things are still getting crappy. Things are still getting worse. I'll check back in a little bit. So brace yourself for what seems like an uncertain and rather dark future. And in the meantime, be thankful that you are blessed to live in such a time where we need strong men and women to survive and teach the current generation coming up how to be self-reliant and not be dependent on the government teat for literally everything. And I have one more question that's completely off topic. Why are people still wearing masks in public? Okay, like here in Florida, mandate is over. You would think that people would be like, hey, the government told me to put a mask on and I sure did. Now they told me to take it off, so I'm going to take it off. No, people are still wearing masks. I don't understand why, but if you know why or you have some ideas, I'd be curious to hear that. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Hey, you still there? Cool. Then don't forget to check out our website located on the interwebs at thesurvivaloutpost.com. We are designed and optimized for hard use, for the self-reliant who talk less and hustle more. Thanks to our international connections, you get first access to unique and innovative products from around the world. This is the gear that will give you that edge you need in a survival situation, or if you're just trying to keep the lights on when the power goes out. Any content mentioned in this video is linked up down there in the pinned post, and be sure to watch the suggested videos for more real-world survival training and knowledge.